How do rising temperatures affect biodiversity? Rising temperatures due to global warming can negatively impact biodiversity in several key ways. Habitat loss. As climate patterns change, the geographical ranges of various habitats can shift or shrink, endangering the species specially adapted to those environments. For example, polar bears are losing Arctic ice habitat. Mismatch with food sources. Many species' life cycles and migration patterns are carefully attuned to specific temperature cues and seasons. As warming disrupts these natural rhythms, species can lose sync with their traditional food sources. Invasive species encroachment. Some opportunistic, invasive species are better able to thrive in warmer conditions than native species. They can aggressively expand their ranges and displace endemic species. Extinction. Climate change, combined with other pressures like habitat destruction, can make it impossible for some sensitive or niche species to survive in their historical native areas. Numerous extinctions are projected if warming exceeds 2–3 degrees Celsius. Diseases and pathogens. Warmer weather enables disease-causing bacteria, viruses, and parasites to expand their geographical ranges, increasing infection risks for wildlife. Extreme weather. Heat waves, droughts, and other temperature extremes linked to climate change can directly kill off vulnerable species and damage delicate ecosystems like coral reefs beyond recovery. So, in summary, biodiversity is expected to suffer as species struggle to adapt to rapidly changing climate conditions and the subsequent ecological shifts. Proactive conservation efforts are needed to help protect at-risk species and habitats. What is the relationship between global warming and storms? There is a direct relationship between global warming and storms' increased frequency and intensity. Here's how they are connected. Warming oceans. As ocean surface temperatures rise due to global warming, it adds more energy and moisture to storm systems. This can make storms stronger and wetter. Polar vortex. Weakening the jet stream that contains cold. Arctically invulnerable, the shift surges, events, air can become more irregular as the Arctic warms disproportionately. This allows more cold fronts to swing south, collide with warm air, and energize storms. Sea level rise. Higher sea levels from melting ice sheets leads to increased storm surge flooding during coastal storms like hurricanes. Increased convection. Higher temperatures mean the atmosphere holds more water vapor, which leads to more powerful updrafts and thunderstorm formation. Slowing circulation. Climate models show global atmospheric circulation is slowing down, which can stall weather patterns and prolong periods of intense storm activity. Expanded tropical zones. Warming expands the latitudes across which tropical cyclones can form and survive, increasing the risk of hurricanes reaching farther north. So, while global warming does not directly cause storms, the changes it induces in ocean and atmospheric conditions substantially affect storm dynamics. This amplifies the damage potential from storms through factors like heavier rains and flooding. Reducing global greenhouse gas emissions can help limit these climate change impacts on storms. What diseases can spread more easily due to climate change? Here are some examples of infectious diseases that can spread more easily due to climate change. Malaria. Warming provides ideal conditions for malaria-carrying mosquitoes to spread into new regions of the world. Malaria currently kills over 400,000 people per year. Dengue fever transmitted by mosquitoes. Dengue cases could increase by over 20% by 2080 due to warmer, wetter conditions that facilitate mosquito breeding. Lyme disease. The geographical range of ticks carrying Lyme disease is increasing as winters warm and their habitats expand northward. Cholera. Rising ocean temperatures promote the growth of the cholera bacteria, which can contaminate seafood and lead to outbreaks like those in South America in the 1990s. West Nile virus transmitted by mosquitoes. Higher temperatures allow for larger outbreaks of West Nile since the warmer climate lets mosquitoes breed faster. Coccidioidomycosis, also called valley fever. This fungal disease has seen outbreaks in the American Southwest as hotter drought conditions disturb the soil it lives in. Heat-related illness. Extreme heat waves made more intense and frequent by climate change can directly threaten human health and lives via heat stress and dehydration. So, in general, climate change enables the spread and proliferation of numerous infectious diseases that are highly sensitive to temperature, precipitation, and humidity levels. Mitigating global warming can help control the transmission risks. How do heat waves affect human health? Heat waves can have significant impacts on human health, especially in vulnerable populations. Heat exhaustion. Profuse sweating, pale skin, muscle cramps, dizziness, headache, nausea, and fainting are symptoms of heat exhaustion due to fluid loss and inadequate blood flow. Heat stroke. Extremely high body temperature, above 103 degrees Fahrenheit, 39 degrees Celsius, causes heat stroke, which can damage the brain, heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys. It can be fatal without emergency treatment. Exacerbated medical conditions. Heat waves worsen chronic conditions like cardiovascular, respiratory, and mental illnesses, and diabetes. These lead to increased hospitalizations. Kidney stones and urinary tract infections. Dehydration contributes to kidney problems and UTIs, which increase during hot weather. Premature birth studies link heat exposure to increased early deliveries, stillbirths, and birth defects. Higher mortality. Heat waves directly contribute to deaths from cardiovascular and respiratory disease across all age groups. The elderly are especially vulnerable. Poor sleep. Increased nighttime temperatures make it harder to sleep well, worsening mood, performance, and immune function. Medication complications. Certain medications like diuretics, psychiatric drugs, and heart medications impair the body's ability to regulate temperature. In summary, heat waves strain the human body's cooling mechanisms and worsen underlying medical conditions. Staying hydrated, avoiding strenuous outdoor activities, and using air conditioning are ways to mitigate health risks. What consequences does the melting of glaciers have? Here are some major consequences of melting glaciers around the world. Sea level rise. Melting glaciers and ice sheets is a major contributor to rising sea levels. This leads to increased coastal flooding and land loss. Low-lying island nations are especially threatened. Altered river flows. Glacial meltwater helps feed many of the world's major rivers and water supplies during warm, dry periods. Reduced glacial runoff can cause water shortages. Loss of habitat. Many plant and animal species like polar bears rely on frozen glacial environments. Their habitats shrink as the glaciers recede. Less hydropower potential. The volume of glacial water available for hydropower dams decreases as glaciers shrink, impacting renewable energy production. Destabilized landforms. Glaciers often stabilize the land beneath them. As they disappear, rock, debris, and soil become more prone to dangerous landslides. Release of greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide and methane locked within glaciers are released as they melt, contributing to further global warming. Albedo changes. Ice and snow reflect sunlight, high albedo. As they melt, darker land and water are exposed, which absorb more heat. Impacts on local cultures. Many societies have cultural connections to glaciers that are threatened as they vanish. Tourism also declines. Species extinction. Some organisms like ice worms and algae unique to glacial environments may become extinct if the glaciers disappear entirely. Glacier loss can dramatically reshape landscapes, ecosystems, and communities worldwide over the short and long term. Why are hurricanes more dangerous due to global warming? There are a few key reasons why hurricanes are becoming more dangerous as a result of global warming. Warmer oceans. Hurricanes get their energy from warm tropical waters. As sea surface temperatures rise due to climate change, there is more heat available to fuel hurricane growth and intensification. Higher sea levels. Coastal areas are enduring increased flooding from elevated sea levels caused by melting ice sheets and glaciers. This allows storm surges driven by hurricanes to reach further inland. Increased rainfall. Warmer air holds more moisture. This leads to hurricanes dumping more extreme rainfall once they make landfall, causing more devastating floods. Slower storms. Some research suggests climate change may be slowing hurricanes' forward motion, enabling them to linger longer over land and produce additional rainfall and damage. Expanded range. Warming ocean waters are enabling hurricanes to form and persist at higher latitudes than traditionally seen, expanding their potential geography. Shift in peak season. The peak hurricane season is starting earlier for some ocean basins, catching some coastal communities more unprepared than in the past. Infrastructure vulnerability. Coastal cities have seen rapid development and population growth, putting more people and property at risk with stronger storms. In summary, hurricanes are projected to grow more intense due to climate-induced changes in ocean and atmospheric conditions. This will likely result in costlier damage from factors like storm surge and heavy rainfall. How does climate change affect ecosystems? Climate change affects ecosystems in a variety of ways. Shifting habitat ranges. As temperatures increase, many species will move to higher latitudes and elevations where conditions are more hospitable. This fragments and shrinks viable habitats. Mismatch with food sources. The timing of migration, breeding, and flower blooming relies on environmental cues like temperature. Climate disruptions can decouple predators from prey and pollinators from plants. More frequent extreme weather events, like drought, flooding, and wildfires outside of historic norms, can damage fragile ecosystems beyond recovery. Sea level rise. Coastal wetlands and mangrove forests are being inundated by rising ocean waters, reducing their biodiversity and ability to act as carbon sinks. Ocean acidification. Increased CO2 absorption makes oceans more acidic, which damages the exoskeletons of marine organisms and coral reef structures. Invasive species. Non-native and opportunistic species often adapt better to climate shifts, allowing them to dominate native plants and animals. Loss of keystone species. Critical ecosystem engineers like coral, beavers, and sea otters suffer population collapses, cascading through the entire food web. Mass extinction. Species unable to adapt quickly enough to climate change as well as other human-caused pressures face extinction, undermining biodiversity. In general, climate change is forcing ecosystems around the world to transform, relocate, and in some cases disappear entirely. Conserving species diversity and natural habitats can help strengthen their resilience. What animal species are in danger due to global warming? Many animal species around the world are having their populations threatened or in their habitats or the loss of the air increases of lost habitat disrupted due to the effects of global warming. Here are some examples. Polar bears. Loss of Arctic sea ice habitat has put increasing pressure on polar bear populations and their ability to hunt seals. Coral reef species. Increased coral bleaching from warming oceans is destroying the fundamental habitat of many marine species. Pikas. These small mountain mammals can die when temperatures get only moderately above their comfort zone. Marine turtles. Rising beach temperatures lead to a skewed sex ratio, more females, that reduces reproductive success. Emperor penguins. Breeding sites reliant on stable sea ice are at risk from melting and receding ice packs. Koalas. Extended drought and heat waves in Australia are causing mass die-offs due to lack of hydration and nutrition. Mountain species. Warming temperatures are pushing alpine and montane species higher in elevation and shrinking their viable range. Coastal birds. Sea level rise reduces available nesting habitat and increases flooding risk for many shoreline bird species. Amphibians. Changing rainfall patterns and increased disease put global amphibian populations at risk. Pandas. Reduced bamboo availability resulting from climate variations threatens one of pandas' main food sources. Protecting animals from climate threats will require reducing greenhouse gas emissions and actively managing landscapes to preserve suitable habitats as environments change. How does sea level rise affect coastal cities? Rising sea levels caused by climate change can have the following impacts on coastal cities. Permanent inundation. Low-lying areas and entire islands could become fully submerged by the ocean. This gradually makes the land uninhabitable. Increased flooding. Sea level rise amplifies the impacts of high tides, storm surges, and tsunamis, leading to more frequent and extensive flooding in coastal settlements. Saltwater intrusion. Saltwater from the ocean infiltrates groundwater aquifers and rivers, threatening drinking water supplies and agriculture. Loss of coastal wetlands. Marshes and mangroves that protect cities from storms and flooding are drowned by higher water levels. Damage to infrastructure. Roads, buildings, ports, seawalls, drainage systems, etc. Not constructed to withstand marine flooding are vulnerable to erosion and corrosion. Displacement of residents. Heavily impacted areas may see inhabitants abandoning their homes permanently if the land becomes too hazardous. Loss of tourism revenue. The economies of coastal cities relying on beaches, waterfront access, fishing, and other visitor attractions can decline. Increased storm impacts. Higher sea levels amplify the damage caused by storm surges, allowing waves and flooding to penetrate further inland. Adaptation measures like dikes, pump drainage, coastal restoration, and elevated foundations may help coastal cities cope with sea level rise to some degree. But extreme rises could ultimately make some metro areas unviable. Why is food getting more expensive due to climate change? Climate change is making food more expensive in several key ways. Reduced yields. Heat, drought, flooding, and other extreme weather driven by climate change. Air increases, reducing crop yields and livestock productivity. Lower supplies drive food prices up. Transport disruptions. Storm impacts on infrastructure like roads, rail lines, and ports increases costs for food transport and distribution. Input costs. Farmers face higher costs for water, energy, and synthetic fertilizers as droughts intensify and fossil fuel supply is stressed. These extra costs get passed to consumers. Farmland damage. Increased erosion, saltwater intrusion, and loss of arable land from sea level rise undermine farming output potential in coastal areas. Refrigeration needs. Hotter temperatures require more energy for refrigeration along every step of the supply chain from farm to supermarket. This added energy expense translates to pricier food. Commodity speculation. Extreme weather events create more volatility in crop yields. This fuels speculation in commodity futures markets, further driving up prices. Food waste impacts like transport disruptions and lack of refrigeration increase food spoilage and waste, removing part of the supply from the market and decreasing affordability. In summary, climate change introduces myriad risks, expenses, and inefficiencies to food production and distribution, making food more scarce and expensive over time.